Welcome to episode 185 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. Stageworthy is a podcast about people in Canadian theatre featuring conversations with actors, directors, playwrights, and more. Today marks the first of my Fringe episodes. So, for the next 7 weeks, we'll be talking to performers and creators with shows in the Toronto Fringe. And don't forget my regular Fringe roundup on both of the Saturdays of the Toronto Fringe, where I will sit down with a group of artists and talk about their Fringe so far, what shows they've loved, and so much more. So I'll get to today's guest in a moment, but first I wanted to tell you that I'll be bringing my play, The Commandment, to the Toronto Fringe. I've performed this show in a number of Fringes, and this is my first chance to bring it home to Toronto, and I'm super excited. The Commandment is a solo play that asks what happens when an atheist discovers that he's been chosen to deliver God's new commandment, and will be performed at the Tarragon Extra Space. You can find out all about it by finding it on your Fringe listings, or by following me on my social links on Twitter and Instagram at Phil Rickaby, and you can also find details on simpletruththeatre.com, and as always, you can find the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StageworthyPod, and the website is stageworthypodcast.com. Now, let's talk about Today Takes. Today Takes is an app and website that offers easy and affordable access to a wide variety of must-see cultural performances, from plays and musicals to dance, opera, comedy, immersive experiences, and beyond. So just added this week is the National Ballet of Canada's Physical Thinking, which opens June 1st, and tickets are 83% off when you buy through Today Takes. Also, there are rush tickets for By Heart at Canadian Stage, which starts on May 30th. And also there are $17 tickets. I can't believe this one. $17 tickets for the May 31st, 8 p.m. performance of the Stratford Festival's The Merry Wives of Windsor, which is an awesome deal, so you should totally get on that. Today Takes makes ticket buying simple, and you can purchase tickets in less than 30 seconds. Get it on iOS and Android, or go to todaytakes.com. My guests this week are Bryn Kennedy and John Wamsley of Theatre Born Between, presenting Beneath the Bed at the Scatting Court Community Centre, Room 4, as part of the Toronto Fringe Festival. And so the show is called Beneath the Bed. Mm-hmm. So tell me about what that's about.
So it's about a child who experiences a loss and then finds that there's a monster living under their bed.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's sort of the short answer. Mm-hmm. But it's to me, it's a show that's much bigger than that. It's about sort of the cycle of healing from mm-hmm. trauma and how that kind of thing gets passed between generations. There's also, it's full of music and mm-hmm. Puppetry and movement. And so it's got all these beautiful elements that sort of weave this story together. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's like this big imaginative story about like that really focuses on like this idea of like escapism a little mm-hmm. bit, you know, like mm-hmm. when you're going through like a childhood trauma and, and different ways that we can cope with that and mm-hmm. and get through.
But is it? I mean, it's a story about a child, but is it a kid's show?
That's a good question. We get that one a lot.
Yeah, I'll bet.
I don't like to think of it that way because I find that can be limiting. I think that mm-hmm. we have certain expectations when we talk about TYA theater.
Yeah.
That I don't know apply to this show. I sort of like to think of it as age accessible mm-hmm, rather mm-hmm. than specifically for children. I think children can come and see it and enjoy it. I think there's tons that they will love that's in the show. Yeah. I also think there's so much meaning for adults in the show that would be missed out on if we specifically marketed to a certain age.
What would the children's age range be for this show, do you think?
That's a good question. I would say like 7 and up, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, it's like you said, like it's very age accessible. Mm-hmm. It's nothing that we're not specifically trying to market to kids mm-hmm. or TYA, but we're also not like pushing that audience away. We're mm-hmm. kind of just letting everybody come in, because it is a very accessible show in that way.
I mean, that is kind of good, because the kids Fringe is this robust thing, but it is segregated. It's away from everything else, and things don't cross over so much. So it's good to have to get a mix of children and adults in a show.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't have a lot of the sort of traditional kids theater components. There's no calling and responses with audience or audience participation or anything like that. Or you're not going to be singing any songs about the alphabet. It's we don't have anything like that happening. But I sort of I think that there's still so much for anyone of any age to enjoy. Yeah.
Now the show is at it's a site specific. So and you chose a room at the Sheridan College Community Center.
Yes.
What was it? Was there something particular that you saw in the room that you really wanted to use, or what drew you to that space?
Yeah.
I found it was a very you go into that room and you're automatically brought back to that play-like stage in your life, and that imaginative sense. And I think that really caters to this show, and this show really caters to that idea. There's this great sort of interplay and exchange between the show and the space that we're creating. And this community center room really works to enhance that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's the preschool room that they run a lot of their very little children classes in. So, it's beautiful. It has construction paper art on the walls and sort of pink orangey flooring and tiny chairs. It brings you right back to nostalgia, which is sort of a huge part of the feeling of our show, is that sort of bittersweet memory of childhood sort of thing. So it just sort of, we walked in and we just thought it was a really great fit, and we really plan to base the show in that specific room. It will be very much about that space.
What are the logistics of working in a room in a community center, where I don't know if during the summer they still have their preschool things? What are the logistics of doing a show in that room?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a lot of coordination, because Sheridan College Community Center is a very busy place. It's a well-used and well-loved community center. So, I mean, our contact there is wonderful, and she's been really supportive. They love the Fringe. The Fringe, they know, they're so familiar with the Fringe. The main base for the Fringe team is the room next door to ours for the duration of the festival. So they're very familiar with having Fringe around. Yeah. And they were super supportive of us asking to do a show there. But, it's a busy space, so there's been a lot of coordinating schedules and, working show times around community classes. And
And it was great. We went to do a tour just a little while ago, just to sort of figure out seating and kind of bring the cast in to really dream up what it is that we're going to be doing in here. And there were about a good handful of different groups in there, and so many kids. And it's, you go in there and you automatically feel that sense of nostalgia. It's I think it's a perfect spot to do this show.
Yeah.
Nice. Where did the show come from? How did it come to you for production at this Fringe Festival?
Well, we Bryn and I both come from the same program. So we're from the University of Toronto, Mississauga, and Sheridan College in the Theatre and Drama Studies program. And there is an extracurricular festival that originally Bryn and Gabe, our playwright, submitted and did the show as a workshop in our third year. And it's always been something that we've wanted to continue to develop for the past couple of years, and decided that this year's Fringe Festival was the place to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So it started as a half-hour workshop of the first half of the show, and we sort of developed that, and we were amazed at that we had a really positive response from audiences, which was really exciting, because we created such a weird little specific world that, you know, you're not always sure, are people gonna connect with this? And we were amazed that people really did, which was exciting. So yeah, I talked to Gabe and I was like, I would love to continue this. Is there more in you to write about this? And he was like, absolutely. I have a whole, this could go so many places. So the first half of the play is about one child, and then the second half of the play is about sort of the next generation. So that child grows up and has a child of their own. And the second half of the play is about her daughter and where that goes. Yeah.
Interesting. When this play first came to you, when you were looking at it, when you were still in school, was it, did you at any point like wonder about the logistic, or like what it would be like doing a show that's predominantly about a child in front of a non-YA audience?
Right. Honestly, it weirdly, it was only when we started pitching the show to sort of, after we graduated, to different opportunities, and people really picked up on the child thing that I really started to consider that. Up until that point, it was just sort of another character. And I think because of the way that Gabe has written the child, they're so insightful and they have so many beautiful observations about the world, that I never really considered their age as any kind of obstacle to connecting with them. I always just thought they just brought a really beautiful viewpoint to the play, and so we've always kind of treated that with a lot of respect. We don't we've never used the child as like a character that gets talked down to, or, you know, an actor playing them needs to play a certain age. Like, that's never really been the goal. So it never really crossed my mind that it would be an adult audience watching this story about a child.
Yeah, it wasn't really until, like you said, like we started like talking to other people and just sort of realizing like, oh yeah, there's kids in this show, you know?
People started asking like, is this a TYA show? And I was like, oh, is it? I had to think about it. And then I was like, I don't, you know, we kind of talked about it and we sort of decided, no, it's not really.
There's so much like maturity and humor and like you said, like insightfulness with this like partnership between the child and the monster that, it doesn't really feel like you're watching a kid's show or a kid-specific show. Were you feeling, when people were asking about it, were you feeling like resistance about it because you were not talking to kids' theaters, or? I
mean, a little bit. The first time someone said it, I was like, what? No, it's not. And sort of, I had this like really bizarre reaction to it. And then I was like, wait, I guess it is, that is a fair observation that it is about a child. I just never really clicked into that. So I did sort of have to, I had an immediate emotional resistance, and then I think I had to justify that and figure out why. I do still, I stand by our decision though. I think it's a show for everyone, but so there has been some resistance, which is sort of why we've been calling it kind of age accessible as kind of our compromise on that, because there isn't going to be anything in the show that a child couldn't see. Like it's not going to be scary, or, you know, everything will be age appropriate for everyone, but so that's sort of our compromise on that one.
When you were experiencing that resistance, when people brought up whether it was kids' theater, what did you figure out, like, what your resistance to it was?
I think it's just that it would keep a lot of adults from seeing it. I think it would change the demographic that's interested in the show. You know, I think you'd get the adults who have to go with their kids, and you wouldn't get necessarily people from our generation who don't have kids, or people who are just not interested in that kind of theater. Like, I do think, you know, I think there's a lot of people who might skip over the kids' Fringe section of the guidebook, you know?
I think once you label anything as like one specific thing, there is sort of like this sense of exclusivity with it. That does scare audiences away sometimes, you know? So I think that was like, there's no need to limit what this show is capable of and limit the audiences that are like going to enjoy this.
Yeah. And I do think that, I think that sometimes, you know, there's theater that is accessible to kids, but it's just theater that's working at such a high level that anyone would see it and enjoy it. You know, like, things like the Soul Pepper Peter Pan, and you know, we're starting to see a lot more theater that just sort of like works for everyone at a really high level, and that's really exciting to me, you know. And so I sort of was like, what's that? What label do they have on that? Like, that's sort of more what to me feels authentic to this show rather than TYA.
Before we start talking about Theatre Born Between and a little bit more about how that came about, I'm curious about your theatre origin stories. What brought you to theatre, and what made you decide that it was a thing that you were going to pursue?
John, what brought you to theatre?
I was always performing in my basement for my parents. That's I guess. I know that sounds so cliche, but that's the thing. And then it wasn't actually until probably like high school that I really caught the bug. The first show I ever did in school was You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and there was no one in the audience, and it was horrifying and embarrassing, but it was like I didn't really care because I just loved what I was doing, and that really propelled me into wanting to study this in university and have this as a career. And because of the program we were in, and because of the opportunities that were there, I really was like inspired to start like, you know, writing stuff or start producing my own stuff or directing, just kind of like dipping my toe into different waters. And yeah, that's kind of it.
When you were, you know, you're doing stuff in high school and things like that, and starting to decide what it is that you were going to do with your life. People do shows in high school and never go on to pursue theater.
Right.
What was it that made you decide that this is what you were going to pursue for your life's work?
Well, I think it really helped that I went to an athletics-based high school. It was one of those things where it's like, well, I definitely don't want to do that. So maybe I'll just do the other thing. And there was an arts-specific high school in the city that I didn't go to. So the high school that I went to, it felt sort of like almost like big fish, small pond with the drama department. Like if I was really passionate about it, it kind of felt like I was one of maybe 3 other people that were super passionate about this, which obviously helped.
And at a certain point you made the decision and was like, this is what I'm going to do. Did anybody push back? Did anybody say, no, it's a hard life? Did anybody try to convince you otherwise, or was
I'm stubborn by nature?
Okay.
I mean, I don't really remember anyone saying like, this is not a good idea for you. But I think because I knew how difficult this was going to be, I was sort of like, yeah, let's give it a try. Let's do this. Like, let's work really hard at this. And, yeah.
Okay. Bryn.
I don't know. I was just always like a dramatic kid from birth, I think. I loved storytelling and talking. And my mom tells a story of my brother performing in a play in first grade, and I would have been 3, he would have been 6, and they had to keep stopping me from wandering up onto the stage to join him. And she thinks I was trying to get to my brother. I think I was trying to get to the stage. So, and it just, they stuck me in classes as a kid, extracurricular classes, and I just never left. So they, I mean, and then I loved theater so much. I used to, you know, spend my money on theater tickets instead of when all my friends were buying concert tickets, you know, and then I went to, so it was sort of an obvious choice for me to continue to pursue that and go to the university program that we did and continue from there. Yeah.
Do you remember what the first show that you saw was?
My parents, luckily, I feel very blessed to come from a family where theater has always been sort of very much of our a part of our culture. You know, my parents have taken me to plays since I was tiny because both their parents took them to plays, and so I don't know what the first one was because we've been doing it for so long, but I do have a distinct memory of the first play that I bought tickets to myself with my own money, which was when I was in grade 4, and they brought the tour of Les Miserables to Toronto, and I desperately wanted to see it because I was singing Castle on a Cloud at the time.
Yes, okay.
So I got tickets for my birthday, asked for them with my own money, and I invited my dad to take the other ticket, and we went to see the show together, and that was a really big deal for me.
Do you remember watching the show?
Oh yeah, I remember just like sobbing openly in the audience, like just being so emotional because I think it was also I hadn't seen the story ever. Like I knew all the songs, but I don't think I knew quite how emotional it was going to be, and I think I was so invested in the story. My mom used to say that when they would take me to shows, she used to say that she could see other people in the audience getting distracted and watching me instead of the show because I would be so invested in it, and they'd be like, "What's this kid doing?" Because I'd be so excited about what I was seeing. But so yeah, I just remember being so emotional and probably I think I talked about it for like weeks afterwards to all my friends. I'm sure I annoyed all of them with all this Les Miserables talk.
John, do you remember the first show that you saw?
I mean, I saw a lot of like community theater stuff when I was in like high school. But I think, I mean, like this is also like maybe it's kind of embarrassing, but I mean, I think the first like big show I ever saw was like Wizard of Oz at Mirvish, like not that long ago. Like it was like right before we went into university.
Oh wow, okay.
Right after the whole like Over the Rainbow reality show and stuff. Yeah.
I was working at the theater at the time.
Oh, okay.
I saw that show a lot.
Right.
Yeah. So what made you guys want to start a theater company?
Well, we both, as John sort of said, we both kind of have explored areas outside of acting and related to. So I sort of found directing in university, and John has been doing writing and creation and movement, and so we just started talking about wanting to create our own work and wanting to have a place to get to take a little bit more agency and ownership over the kinds of things we were doing and not just rely on what auditions were coming up or, what was available to us.
Yeah. I mean, there was one night where we were just like hanging out. Like I had just moved, like Bryn's been living in Toronto her whole life. And I had just moved to the city after university. And we were sitting in like my tiny little apartment watching Drag Race and eating Thai food and talking over a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And I think we were just talking about like how we wanted to create all this work, about how there was like these projects that we were really interested in, people that we wanted to work with. And we just kind of got to talking of like, maybe we should just do this.
Yeah. And I think by the end of the night, and then we kind of we talked through, we had a few projects that we've both been working on that were sort of the next, we were like, well, we could do this and this and this, and of which Beneath the Bed was one of them. And then by the end of the night, by the time I was going home, we just sort of looked at each other and we were like, did we just make a theater company? And because we said, when we put it all together, all of these things that we wanted to do, all these ideas we had, or projects in the making, we had suddenly like a list of like 5 projects that we could do at any time, So if we just put the work in. And
we've already done 3 out of...
Yeah, we've done
3.
Done 3, yeah.
Out of whatever that mystery list was. But yeah, like as Bryn was like going home, by the time she got home, I'd already sent her like logos.
Oh yeah, that's right, you did.
I was just like, this is a thing. This is what we're doing.
John was like, here's our season art.
Was self-production something that they talked about at theater school for you?
A little bit. I would say our program has more of it than some other ones, perhaps because there's more extracurricular opportunities that are sort of not class-based to make work. So, we have some student festivals, and which was how both of us did some directing and at school. So, they taught us a little bit about theater tech and things like that. So we had sort of a little bit more of a range of skills around that sort of assist with self-creation at least. But the producing side of things, not really. No. I wouldn't say. No. That was sort of something that we kind of have had to learn on our feet.
What's been the most surprising thing about producing that you wish you knew before you started to self-produce?
So much.
All of it.
God, yeah.
The first show we did was selections from Vitals by Rosamund Small, and we did that in the Paprika Festival. And then after that, we were like, okay, let's do the whole thing. Let's put it up. And that was like kind of our first big like, oh, we're producing something.
Yeah.
And that came with a whole book of challenges that we didn't even know. Like I didn't even know the book existed. You know, so. Yeah, like TAPA memberships and the whole thing. It's like, we have to get this? Like, we have
to... Insurance, what?
And like, just do the show.
Yeah. I think there was way more spreadsheets than either of us could have ever anticipated would be involved in making theater.
Yeah.
You know, budgeting, expenses versus revenue. Like, it's all these things
How to operate a Google Drive.
Yeah.
Like, that is its own skill set.
Like, it's such a weird thing to go from being like, oh, I'm just an artist. I make the creation side. And then have to like figure out, okay, no, we need numbers to make that happen. Though.
I do think that's one of those things that they should be telling us.
Absolutely,
you know?
yeah.
Because it's becoming more and more important to self-produce.
For sure.
And so here, everybody gets out of theater school and they're like, spreadsheets, what?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, I had no idea, like being a young director in the city, talking to other young directors who are doing work, you know, it's sort of turned into, when I hear about what other people are doing, when they say that they're getting to just direct and not also produce the show that they're working on, to me, I'm like, oh my God, what a luxury. That's fantastic. You know, because I'm so used to having seen sort of how the independent theater industry works now for 2 years. You know, everyone is producing the work that they're working on, you know. It's almost, it's so common now that if you're acting or directing something or writing something, that you're also producing it. So when you're just doing that creative component, I'm like, wow, you must have so much free brain space.
Yeah, we're thinking about marketing, but then we're also worried about getting a rehearsal space, but then we're like, oh yeah, we have to, you know, pay the actors and then pay ourselves, and then it's you're wearing every hat. And that is something that they don't really teach you in theater school, at least for when we were. Like when we went.
Not so much,
I think it's pretty rare. I think that you know, at least for Fringe, there's you know, you don't have to worry about insurance and you know, your performance space at least is taken care of, and you don't have to go and find that. I do think it's often a crash course in publicity for new producers and new people who are putting stuff together. Have you guys, having produced some stuff before, what's your feeling about do you have a plan for marketing? Do you feel like you're more prepared for that aspect than you have been in the past?
Well, I did. I jumped into marketing and communications in university, kind of taking on the role of trying to like revamp the online presence for the theater on campus. And that evolved into different marketing jobs since graduating. Right now I'm the communications manager at the Paprika Festival.
Okay.
So communications and marketing has become like a strong skill set of mine.
Sure.
Only because that's kind of what you have to do now. The same with you. Yeah.
It's sort of funny that we actually both have marketing backgrounds, because I now after graduating school, I'm working right now as the marketing coordinator for Studio 180 Theater. So both of us sort of it's something that we do as our sort of side hustle day job. So we both sort of have I would like to think, is fairly strong understanding of it. So, you know, John runs all our social media and does I think personally a fantastic job with that.
Me too,
and makes all our beautiful graphics. I think for Fringe, like the most important thing that I've seen, and I notice it in how I approach the Fringe Festival as a patron, and also, you know, from the inside of marketing some shows last year, I think a strong a strong, recognizable image goes a really long way in Fringe. A really professional, beautiful looking image, whether that's a photograph or a graphic or some kind of graphic design. Something that makes you look professional, that helps your show stand out and look interesting and different. And I think that goes a long way even. And
I have, while looking at the Fringe program, cross stuff off my list because of the image they chose for the program.
Absolutely.
Image,
Yeah.
And maybe I've missed out on some awesome stuff, but I've always something like that's an important image. And maybe their poster later got better, but that's the first thing I saw. And so I've always been a bit of an image snob, in that if the imagery in the program is no good.
Yeah.
Well, the image and the graphic of a show is intended to be an indication of your vision for what the show is.
Yeah.
You know? So if I feel the same way in that, like, if I'm flipping through a program or if I'm looking at like a poster wall like they have at the Fringe tent, if I'm not seeing something that is like striking or eye-catching or intriguing in any way, I'm not necessarily drawn to that show. It's the same with like online marketing. If you don't have like a level of frequency of like online publicity, then like you get lost in the shuffle easily, especially with Fringe. Because there is so much going on. It's like the Olympics.
But it is also one time of year where there is an audience that is looking for stuff to see. And so you have the potential of doing really well because there are people looking for stuff with more intensity than they often are at other times of the year.
Yeah, and I think that's something we're really excited about with being in Fringe, because our last production in November at Vitals, we sort of had to find our own audience base for that, and we're excited with Fringe to be able to branch out beyond just the people that we personally know and hopefully reach people who don't know us or aren't familiar with our work but are willing to take a chance on, new artists who the description sounds intriguing, because that's the lovely, beautiful thing about Fringe is there's a whole host of people who just go to support new work and try people out and they might find their next new favorite theater artist there. And that's really exciting to us to be able to expand our reach that way.
I'm always a big fan of audience members who go the first weekend.
Yeah.
Before the reviews have come out, those people, the pioneers of Fringe, who go out and they're like willing to see whatever before it's a solid choice. Yeah. I love those people because they're the risk takers.
Oh, for sure.
Because it's a sport to some people, right?
Oh, yeah.
I want to see as many shows as I possibly can in 2 weeks.
Yeah. And we appreciate those people who help us to sell out the early shows so we can start being sold out as soon as possible.
It's amazing how important that is.
Yeah.
The sold out. And I've tried to tell people who aren't as familiar with Fringe as I am that if you sell out your first show, it's more likely that your second show will sell out. To be able to say the show is sold out automatically means to other people that this is a show to see, and
it's
so
a good show.
people will go to it. And it's like, how do you manufacture a sold out show? What's the trick to that?
Yeah. Beg all your family and friends to come early in the run.
Yeah,
there is that.
Yeah,
you guys also have the advantage that being at Skyling Court, you are right next to the postscript Fringe patio.
You see us 5 minutes before our start time, and just.
We got 8 seats left. Who want them? Over at the bar. That was a specific choice to be in that location. When we were scouting out for different spots, we looked at a really wide range of possible venues. We looked at art galleries in the area, and we had so many thoughts.
At one point, we looked at what is it? You look at the stars.
Oh, we wanted a planetarium. But there's none in Toronto anymore.
No, that's too bad.
They're all way up north at York University or something. So we were too far. But because we were very, very clear that we wanted to give no one an excuse not to see this show. And with Fringe, location is so important in that.
Absolutely.
Because when people are making their back-to-back schedules, you want them to be able to be I could see this show before or after this one, this one, and pack it all in.
Absolutely. Being able to navigate the time between locations is also really super important. What Have there been any challenges in getting ready for Fringe this year that you guys have, or is it just the fact that like as we record this, like you said when we sat down, somebody said it's 6 weeks to Fringe, and you were like, don't say those numbers. Yeah. Like, is it just like how quickly it comes up that's the challenge at this point?
I think it's like I think time is a resource that gets sort of underestimated in independent theater. You know, that's that. You know, neither John or I get paid for the work that we're doing at this point, and we're both really busy with lots of things. You know, John's right in the middle of the Paprika Festival, so we have a limited number of hours in the day, and you know, it's just the two of us. So if one of us doesn't do something, it doesn't get done. You know, there's no team catching the ball, or you know. So I think it's like the resource of time is something that can be difficult with independent producing when you're balancing, you know, the jobs that make you money and pay your rent, and the other work that you have to do, the other projects that you're involved in, because no one's ever working on like one project at a time, right?
That's true. I think something else too is something that we're, I guess, sort of going through right now is rehearsal spaces. Because, you know, like you want to look for a big enough space to, especially for our show, to do movement work in. But that's also affordable. But the people that are setting the prices for these spaces are also artists. So it's this sort of like cycle of like, I can't really afford that. And I'm like, well, I can't afford otherwise. So, you know.
Yeah, and space, I mean, just in general, rehearsal space, venue space, like all of that in Toronto is just getting more and more inaccessible and harder to find. You know, and that's why you hear about people getting really resourceful and weird with their rehearsal spaces, which is, you know, we're trying to do. But it's tough. Like that's one that people underestimate a lot. That's a big challenge.
It is hard because it's not like new performance spaces are opening up frequently.
No.
And rehearsal spaces are much the same. Like there's some are closing down, and very few open up again. So it's hard to do all of that. In terms of the resource of time, how are you navigating and working to make sure that you have the time within your busy schedule to do the things that need to be done for Fringe?
I think it's just I've been really trying hard. I got very overwhelmed, I feel like, in our last show that we did, because it just felt like a never-ending to-do list that just, you know, because with certain aspects of doing a show, especially on the creative side, you get to a point where you're sort of like, this job is done. Like you get, as a director, you get to a point where you're like, we made the show. This is the show now. And, you know, from a producing standpoint, there's always more that you can do. You're never, until the show closes and you're like, I literally can't do anything anymore. There's always something else you technically could be doing, you know?
And then even then it's doing like all the wrap up.
All the wrap up stuff. Yeah. So I think for me this time, something that I'm focusing on with time is just taking things one step at a time and just trying to be like, okay, what's the next thing that has to get done? What's the next thing that has to get done? And sort of going through it that way, because it can be overwhelming with the just sheer amount of things to do. Yeah.
I think just tackling one thing at a time takes a huge amount of discipline, because I don't know, with me, as I'm getting closer to Fringe and preparing to do my own show, although I have a list of what needs to be done next, my you know, when I'm falling asleep at night, I'm like, oh, there's that, that. I'm all over the place, and it's hard for me to concentrate on just one thing.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's not easy. I don't know, just trying to stay like focused and calm about it. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, Bryn and I've, like I said, like I've worn many hats over the years, like producing, directing, acting, writing, marketing, everything. And I think after having, I mean, I know it's still early on for the two of us, but after having a few projects under our belt and kind of getting to understand the lay of the land, we have a lot more trust in ourselves to push forward on a project like this. And on top of that, we have an amazing artistic team this time around. And it's, we have so much faith and so much trust in them that it's sort of like, we're worried about time. Fringe is in 6-ish weeks. But we both have the skill set to make things happen. We have an artistic team that has such a strong skill set to make things happen. And, I think as new producers, it's just blind trust.
Who does that blind trust get placed in? Yourselves or other people or?
I think myself, like ourselves, it's because if I'm sitting around not trusting anybody else, and it's like, what does that say about me? Right. So if I've got trust and confidence in the fact that I have a lot to offer, everyone else will just like feel the same.
Yeah.
Awesome. What do you guys, what's the thing that you're most looking forward to about presenting this show at Fringe?
Oh my gosh. That's such a lovely question I haven't even thought about yet. Oh, that's because we've had such a laundry list of things to do. Oh wow. Well, I don't know. This show has just been with us for so long. We've been working to get it out there for years, trying to find the right opportunity, the right fit. I was struck at our first read listening to these beautiful actors that we have, and we're so lucky to work with, listening to them read this beautiful script out loud, and it just, my heart opened up to these characters again. I haven't really gotten to be with them in a few years since we worked on it last, because it's been so much a focus on applications and deadlines and, to get it out there in the first place, that I haven't really had the brain space for thinking about this show creatively in a long time. And it made me so excited to get to share these beautiful characters with people again. The monster and the child, like they're funny and they're quirky and they're insightful and compassionate. Like they're these really beautiful, lovely characters that people fall in love with immediately. And I'm so thrilled and excited to get to share them with audiences, because I really think that people will connect with them. So I'm excited for that, I think.
Yeah. We've pulled together like this really electric team of young artists that I've worked with some of them, Bryn's worked with some of them, we've admired them from afar, and it's just I'm so excited to like collaborate with everybody, get in the room, and then kind of just like have this explosive show in Scanning Court and sharing that with a bunch of like new audiences.
Nice.
Guys, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
This has been a Homebody Productions production.